Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of FECG TV, which stands for the Fisher Educational Consulting Group YouTube television channel. If you're new and just joining us, this channel focuses on highlighting the voices of educators of color and also focusing on providing strategies for supporting our BIPOC student populations across the nation. If you're not familiar with BIPOC, it stands for Black, Indigenous People of Color. Here on this show, once a week or every other week, we highlight an education leader or educator of color to speak on nationally occurring problems that we want answered as a result of a national survey that we send out. Today, we have our awesome guest, Dr. Carlos Lopez. Today, he's going to be talking to us about strategies for building diversity, equity, and inclusion within your school system or your school district. If you're new and joining us, we usually pose about 10 questions to our guest, and then we allow them to elaborate near the end. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest, Dr. Carlos Lopez. Dr. Lopez, how are you doing today?
Okay, how are you, Sean? How's it going?
I am doing well. Thank you for asking. So are you ready to jump into it?
Any day that I'm up, I'm blessed, and I can say yes.
Outstanding, outstanding. So let's start with just tell us about you and your pathway to your current position. And don't leave out any details. Our viewers love to hear the richness of your story.
Okay. Well, interesting. I was born in Cuba, and I came here when I was 9 years old. So I entered the United States on July 29th, 1970. I didn't speak any English, and of course, I went through culture shock, and it took me forever to learn English because I was resisting because I was traumatic. My two sisters were straight A kids. I was not. I was a behavior problem kid. So you could imagine I wasn't. I had an IEP, was placed in special education. What I have is attention deficit disorder that I have created and made it a gift. And my mom was very, very good about, parents are children's first and most memorable teacher. My mom certainly served as a champion on that for me. All the techniques and skills that I learned through a patient mom that actually took the time to really work through all my challenges that I had and let me know that I was a good person and that I would amount to great things. And even though sometimes I didn't hear that from educators, I did hear at home. And that was the foundation. I knew that even though at school they didn't value that I spoke Spanish and that I came into the school and they thought I was completely useless, I knew I brought wealth, and experience, and I knew I was very solid with that. Sean, I was very fortunate because I did have opportunity. When I was in fourth grade, I encountered an African-American librarian, Miss Ruby Harvey, and that librarian was a game changer for me. I was at the table playing with this little trolls. She had these little trolls in her library. And she came up to me and said, hey, what you doing? And I said, me don't speak any English. And she said to me, you speak enough English. What she ended up doing is I just didn't understand why she was on my face. This Ruby Harvey, she was African-American. Ruby Harvey decided to tutor me. And she took me on because she saw something in me before I ever saw it. And I'm an educator today. There's the love and compassion and the resilience of Ruby Harvey, who actually, she didn't have to do that, but she did, And Sean, I'll tell you from the bottom of my heart, Ruby Harvey attended my graduation in high school, attended when I graduated from college with my associate degree in early childhood education, then attended when I had my master's degree. And at the age of 28, when I got my doctorate degree, I was looking at the same spot where she always would stand up there, Cobo Hall, and she was in there. My dad, who I had not seen for 20 years, so he had left when we came from Cuba to California, had come, and he was not my target. My target was I really wanted Ruby Harvey to be there to see me graduate with my doctorate in curriculum and instruction. When I'm coming out of Cobo Hall, back in the day, there was a little fountain there with a statue with water, I don't know. And as I was coming out of there, standing by the little water statue was Ruby Harvey with a little present in her hand. I don't know what that present. I can't remember what the present was. The biggest present for me was her present, and it just meant so much to know that someone saw you, heard you, got you, understood you, value you, regardless of color, regardless of all the challenges you had. And so, what I learned from Ruby Harvey was number one of the most powerful lessons I have as an educator to be tenacious every single day. I should never give up on any child, no matter who that child is. And so, when you see me and a child, and you get to know me a little bit better, you'll see that I am all about very center around student and focus because I had a great guide. When I left elementary school, she made sure that she connected me with Mrs. Grimes, which is the librarian in the middle school, who then connected me again to the high school, and I worked in the English department. All I can say to you, I was very surrounded. That's why I love literacy, because librarians shared a wealth of literature with me and materials. And so all I can say to you from the bottom of my heart, I'm here because of those great educators. My career was very interesting. I started as a classroom aide, and I went over to teacher, assistant principal, and all the jobs that you working in Detroit Public School, you got it. They put you through the ringer. But I got the best education possible in training as an administrator and the quality in Detroit Public Schools. I know that sometimes people look at urban environments as ineffective and whatever, but they bring the very top-notch professional to train you, to prepare you. And the trainings that I received have gotten it allowed me to go throughout the state of Michigan and Elkland County, Wayne County, now Washington County, and everywhere else. Okay, and what I love about being in Detroit, and I'll be honest, Sean, that I missed as I left and now at IPSI, it allows me that opportunity is that a place where equity is unapologetic, a place where you could talk about race, a place where you could really have conversation about what you're seeing and how we collectively can change and shift. And so I love IPSI because it's like a mini Detroit, and for me personally, because of the culture responsive, the response, making sure that children are seen, heard, understood, valued, respected, but most of all loved. Because, and I do use the word love because Yolanda Sillery addresses that. I'm going to be honest with you. Why I'm where I am because Mrs. Ruby Harvey loved me. She loved me. She made sure that I knew she had my back. She was that adult in that building that championed me. And so it's important. So this is, in a nutshell, I've been in Oakland County. I've been the superintendent before River Rouge. I did a whole lot of stuff, but that is irrelevant to what you do every single day. It's how you show up every day in your new experience and how impactful you are. And the minute that you're not impactful, you got to get the heck out and give those opportunities for others who could go there. Sean, I always led with the following. Don't tell me, I tell that to educators all the time. Don't tell me that you believe that every child can learn. Show me by your actions. And that is so powerful for me because action means more to me is what you do, how you show up, how you become, how are you an anti-racist showing up in that space? How are, you know that if you're not able to be there as a co-conspirator, comparison, an ally, then don't talk to me. Because the reality is it's you have to be in the arena. And it's when you're needed that you're called to action, the actions you take that shows me how courageous you are and how deep you are in this real equity work. Let me tell you, equity is how you breathe every day. Either you're humane or you're not. It's how and maybe people disagree with me. The beauty in this country is the great diversity. The challenge is that people don't have issues about being different. People have issues about how people judge and those judges that are made. Alina, our superintendent, Zachary Ross up at River Rouge, says something like constantly. And she always says, don't freeze people in time. Don't freeze yourself in time. All these stereotypic stuff that we learn from fear. And we got to unlearn all this nonsense because at the end, it's all about how do we connect with people in a humane level. And unless you open yourself and become curious about it, but you just can't sit there. I'm going to wait. Wait for what? You got to dive in there and step right into it and learn along the way and be comfortable with not knowing. Be comfortable that you're going to screw up. Be comfortable that, hey, can I try again? And that's in a nutshell, you know. And Sean, I suck at telling about myself because it doesn't really matter. What matters is what we are doing every day to open doors for our children so they could have greater plight than we do. At 28, I had a doctorate degree. I want our kids to get everything they get possible. I don't think every kid has to do that route. There's many different routes. Follow what you love and you go out there, but we should be preparing children for life success and moving forward very unapologetically. And so that means looking internally at our systems of oppression that exist in every school. The schools have been, is one of sometimes are the most oppressive institutions that really support racism at higher levels, Sean. And there's not a day that I go at every job, including where I am right now, that I don't encounter racism. And I'm constantly, I have a role to challenge. I have a role to say, hey, we got to look at this differently. I don't know. Let me be quiet because I know you have a lot of questions.
No, that was perfect. And I disagree. You don't suck at it, talking about yourself. You're telling a very important story. You know, we are our stories, and stories provide a starting point for others to emulate the same actions. I also like how, you know, in your opening I always mess this word up, soliloquy, how you differentiated between being an ally and being a co-conspirator. You know, there's that action piece when we're looking at co-conspirators. So I love that we're actually being an anti-racist. There's a difference between knowing that racism is wrong, and that's theoretical. But what we need is that applied action. So we need the actual anti-racism piece. If we're going to combat racism, we need if we're going to combat racists, we need anti-racist, right? So we need the action piece. So you were spot on. I really appreciate you outlining those details. So thank you for that. Let's go ahead and move to our next question. I'm just looking at my notes. Talk to me about how, so we're looking at equity, right? How has the pandemic impacted you, your staff, and the students that they lead?
Yeah. First, Sean, I would say to you from the bottom of my heart, to any listeners who are listening, if you lost someone during this pandemic, you know, I know that it was very difficult to watch on TV and to experience personally, and our families of color experience a lot of loss. Not being able to bury our loved ones in the middle of a pandemic and everything else. And all I can say, I personally, people don't know that in my job because I don't talk about things like that. But I lost my dad at that point as well. And we experienced that. My sisters were very close to my dad. I wasn't as close, but yet my sisters were. But I still felt for my sisters, you know, and them not being able to travel to California and all this. That was very, very difficult. So I would say to you from the bottom of my heart, for everyone who experienced loss, etc., um, my heart goes to you, and know that I prayed every day, and I pray to this day, every morning, every midday, and every night. And I pray for that the decisions that I'm making are in the best interest of the children and the people I serve, and that it's not self-served. Because at this point in time, life has taught me, as you get to know me, I'm not about, I love, all about me is about learning, but in relationship to people is all about serving. And then I think that that's very, very important, that we are instilling in our children and everyone that sense of responsibility that we have to each other. In relationship to the pandemic, since you were asking, I really, I really, and our district, Ypsilanti Community School, took on the pandemic as a learning opportunity to innovate, to create programs, to do things differently. During the pandemic, we were able to start Spanish immersion program at IPSI. We were able to graduate children with a seal of our literacy for being able to graduate with 2 languages and setting those things. We were able to open a fully online school that has about 300 students in K-8 that really services homeschool students and other students who want to be in that medium. So we became a one-to-one in technology infrastructure. We didn't know where the money was going to come, but we needed to do something. All the staff got trained immediately. Children learn. I think one of the things that I witnessed in the pandemic, Sean, was the resilience of our children, our parents, and our teachers. Lessons learned, learning justice, and we say fastest learning justice. Fatima Love speaks about that, and I'm a firm believer in that. And in the retrospect, now that we have come back, shame on us if we start blaming children for a pandemic that they didn't control. And to rush children to learning is criminal. You understand? And I think that what we need to do is create the conditions. We're looking at our materials to make sure that the materials reflect the children that are in front of us. We worked hard in spending almost $150,000 in buying libraries of diverse background books. So the purpose is because Sean, when you look at the United States, if I was a child of white, I see myself in almost 80% of the books that are out there. They're all written and catered to kids that look like me. I'm going to be honest with you, Sean. You look at me. I was born in Cuba. I got to tell you something that I don't see my I see myself as a Latinx because when I came from here, I have a name called Carlos Lopez. When I came here, I experienced a lot of racism because of that. Okay, and because I didn't speak English, and I got denied opportunities even in the university where I want to conduct research, and they would give it to my counterparts because they were proficient in English, etc. And even though I could write at that point and whatever, didn't get those opportunities. I'll share something with you even further that as competent as I am, and when I get into districts, oh, they don't want to let you go, right? Because they see all I can do, right? The reality is, every job that I've ever have had was given to me by an African American. No white person has ever offered me a leadership job. No other district that serves children. And if I got into districts that are white, and I have, is because the African American leader there got me in there. That's challenging to me. When people want to peg me that I can only serve as children who are Latino, you follow me, or minority, that kind of thing. Reality is we need to get better at that diversity and how we hire people and where do you see people. The biggest challenge that I will say to you, to your viewers, if you're an educator and you're a superintendent or what in those roles, lead with action, lead with courage, and diversify your team. Our district is thriving. Our director of technology is Asian. Our director of finance is from India, a woman from India. Our director from state and federal is an African American woman. Our superintendent is African American. Our HR director people don't know that she's Native American white female. Uh, I'm Cuban, and I'm the curriculum director there. And Mark, the director of grants and whatever, all the innovation, he writes all the dollars. He's this man secures dollars. You can't believe he's a white male. All I can say to you, when we get in a room, and Sean, you're part of that team. When we get in the room, we are creating greatness. And what the strength is our differences, it's our experiences, and our thinking non-traditionally. And Sean, David Rock, my favorite book in leadership. If you ever ask me, I know, because I walked to your office. I'm very impressed. First of all, I am so thankful. I'm so thankful that you have joined us at our district, and I'll tell you why. Because you're very educated, and not only that, you value learning. Yeah, I've seen your podcast, got a couple of your books. I'm just impressed, and I know that you probably don't want me to talk about that, but all I gotta say to you, that makes a difference. That makes a difference in the life of our young people. That makes a difference in how other leaders see the district. Because the other aspect is how you change mindset. Is competence. Do you understand? And the reality is, I could do circles around people in curriculum like you can imagine. And but on the other hand, getting that seat at the table was not very right there. I've been in my district where my superintendent is brilliant, and we invite people to that table. They will come to our building and they will be looking at me because I look like the white man, especially when my little gray hair comes out. I look white as a ghost because, believe it or not, my grandparents were all from Europe, and they migrated to Cuba because of the Black Plague pandemic that hit back in the day. They had to leave their country and they came to Cuba, so they didn't mix with the Cubans and they married. They had their kids. I was product of the kids. And so when my sister did that genealogy thing, couple during the pandemic, it got me all depressed and whatever. I don't mean to be disrespectful in any which way, trying to just I see it's interesting because you see yourself different than maybe you are. Do you understand? And that's why I always say to people, ask people, don't assume. So my sister does this genealogy. My sister's blonde, blue eyes, whatever, who dyes her hair red, whatever. To make the story short, she did the test, and we are 97.99 European white, okay? I had this face of disgust. My sister said, "What did you think you were?" I said, "I'm a person of color. That's how I see myself, right?" Yeah, because I see that because what I encounter, the racism that I encounter coming to the United States, I've been treated in this manner, and so I associate with how I brought up and how I see myself. So we can't just judge by looking at people. We got to ask. We got to get into their space. I live with my nephew who his father was Afro-Cuban, and so he associates himself not as a Cuban or he's black, and he lives with me now. He's in a doctoral program and whatever. And I always have my nieces and nephews move in with me and whatever. So all I can say to you, the biggest piece that I find is this is amazing, is an experience that we need to ask people. The other thing, don't assume anything. Ask, inquire, learn. Don't freeze people in time, and be acceptance. There's a difference between tolerating and acceptance. Tolerating means I'll put up with you as long as I can. And acceptance means I could be in the same space, advocate for you. I don't necessarily have to turn around and be gay or whatever it is, but I'm going to be there for you. And I'm going to value you and treat you like the human that you are, and not see that as, like other people see it as weakness. As you get to know me a little bit better, I'm always very mesmerized by transgender humans and beings, right? And I'll tell you what, I love the courage that it takes for these individuals. And my heart is always jealous at that courage that against all odds, they are going to be true and real to who they are. And to me, that is inner strength to the highest level. And to me, I don't, as a human, I have so much admiration and respect that maybe others may not see it, but I'm always attracted to courage of people who are willing to be themselves at all points in time. I always aspire to that, but you always don't live up to it. You follow me? There's always some limitations that hold you back a little for whatever our comfort level is. So interesting.
That statement right there provides a natural segue to our next question. So tell me a lot about, what does diversity, equity, and inclusion mean to you? That was a perfect segue. Thank you.
Okay. So I would say the following. Everybody gets caught in the garbage truck is coming, so you're gonna hear for a little minute. But anyways, I would say the following to you. The biggest thing is people like to get into definition and get there and get stuck there. And like, for example, I see districts where this year is this book study, the next year's another book study. You could book study your world to end in time until you dive into action and start living to those core principles. You're talking is terminology. Do you understand? But how is that impactful to the children that you're leading? How is that impactful? How you're showing up every day? So the way that I see uh, diversity, equity, inclusion, the DEI, is the whole perspective, something that It's like eating, breathing. You breathe it every day. You see it every day. It shows up every day. Question is, are you observing and reflecting on a daily basis about the actions that you're taking or the opportunities that you're allowing to pass by with no action? Okay. So I think that you got to search for that courage and become unapologetic, because if you're thinking about others and not yourself, and you see children being hurt, etc., we got to make a stand. Let it be LGBT, race, any issue, any age is an ageism, whatever we witness. We have a level of influence and a moral responsibility to interject and show that human being that I'm here, and I'm not on my presence. I'm not going to allow that to happen to you. And as educators, we need to be very comfortable in challenging students when you see students using these oppressive tone. And the other aspect, Sean, the biggest piece, and a lot of educators themselves is adults using microaggression to hurt our children. And that, stick a stone and that words won't ever hurt you. Words do hurt you. Yes, it does. It's like dagger. It could silence you. It could get you to spaces where you're invisible. So don't tell me that words don't. Words are something more powerful to kill our children than anything else. I guess I question, because I walk through classrooms throughout this United States and all the classrooms that I've been, and people, educators, look the other way. We got to continue to challenge the status quo. We need to identify what's wrong, where are systems failures, and then dive deep. If it's the curriculum that needs to be, it's the materials that need to be, it is the systems, the policies, the procedures, the systems that of oppression, like tracking. How many kids are in the IB program? How many children in the IB? What is the makeup of those children who are in the IB program? What's on the STEM? And so how do you diversify and open opportunities and create a pathway? And it has to start in kindergarten. So you want to get a kid in STEM, well, you better start it in kindergarten. It's too late by the time so I just think we need to look at teacher education differently. I know you're going to ask me one question about what I think about what America could do. I, boy, do I have an answer for you, because the reality is, even in our district, I can just tell you, if it was up to me, we would revamp the whole educational system in relationship to how we prepare teachers. Because right now, Sean, K-12, that post-secondary has so many barriers to not attract anybody of color. It's intentional. And people may not see it, but it is intentional. And then the other aspect, how the heck are you going to attract people of color if you don't want to pay them the kind of funding that I don't know about you, Sean, as you get older, your needs are less than when I was younger. Okay. And so when you get starting on, you had nothing. You that's when you need the money up front. Okay. I think it should be the other way around. Get more and and maybe I'm not. I know you probably think I'm nuts, but I don't know. I when I was in Detroit, I advocated and we had opportunities. And so one of the things that I was able to do that with to grow the bilingual teachers, all the bilingual teachers started at step 4. Do you understand? So they started at 50 something. Do you understand? So they were able to get in with a salary. That's why they went to the career. Other thing is, students, they were able to do student teaching and get paid to do it. So that was those two things economically made sense. Yeah. How are you going to student teaching for a person of color who doesn't have financial? How the hell are you going to survive? And no disrespect, Sean. It just, we got to think things differently. So you want to attract teachers of color, then we got to look at how do we create those conditions? Because it isn't from the very start, it's not built that way. And so, and how do you nurture? I travel with Alina in a number of urban superintendents thing because I go for the learning, right? And what I've noticed, and watch all these African American and Latino educate who are going to become these urban superintendents, and I'm very impressed with the quality. Okay, and I sit back and how did they get there? Do you understand? How did their stories, and you hear them talking their stories, it is powerful. But they have had to endure so many challenges to get to where they're at. Do you understand? When you get a superintendent like Alina, you could tell how unapologetic she has to be, right? Because the reality is nothing has been given to them in a platter. They've had to work to get to where they're at. No different than you, Sean. Um, we got to make conditions better. And this just me. I'm sorry, but equity is every day. The EDI is either you live to those core principles, you do not. Sean. Um, and the thing I would say about equity, even in our district, when we look at the data. Where are the students? Who are the students that need more help? That's what services need to be. The service has to follow kids, not I'm going to give every teacher, every school the same thing. That does do anything for each other. So you got to look at where are the needs. How do we support students and what kind of needs and support they need? Keep asking why, and then go why again, and why, and why. And by the time you get there, you understand. An example of those 5 whys, for example, Sean, there's a nice video that you see the Lincoln Memorial was getting, they were power spraying it, and the water was too hard. It was kind of destroying the marble, whatever. So they needed to find out why are they spraying it so much, and it was costing a lot of money to do it anyways. But they were spraying. Well, because pigeons were there and they were pooping, right? So the why was you could have stopped there. How do we stop the pigeon? Well, it wasn't when you go a little bit deeper, is because bugs are there. That's why the pigeons were going there. And so why would bugs there? Because the lights at night are there. So once they started turning the lights off at a certain level of time or dimming them, the bugs weren't there. There was no need. The pigeons weren't there. No need for all that power, and nothing was being destroyed. The action is if you would have jumped quickly on one of those decisions, it was the pigeon the problem. You never got to the root cause, and that's what happens in public education. And so when you read about all these $1 million in reform that went nothing, because they never got to the real root cause of the problem. The root cause of the problem, and I'll share with if a child can't read, we got to work hard to teach them to read. That's it. There's no magic here. And you could buy all these magical programs and whatever, like every other district does, including ours. If that would have been the secret, we would have had all these proficient kids. All that stuff doesn't always necessary. It's the human dynamic connections, that a great teacher with a student, a tutor, whatever it is, it takes to get those kids going to where I got to read and write because I read and write every day, Sean. I write every day. I create every day. That's who Carlos is, right? But I wasn't like that as a kid. I've grown to become this, right? Um, I'm sorry. Let me be quiet.
No, no, not a problem at all. So I want to pose a little bit more direct question. I think you've covered quite a bit of this, but I want to give you an opportunity to be more explicit in your answer. How important is DEI work to your current position as an assistant superintendent of curriculum, instruction, and assessment?
Again, Sean, with that one is every day, right? What I've done since I got into the district is I turn into, and I think those election days are very political, right? So then I use those to make them all. Every district that I've gone, I introduced deep equity work, and we make that day solid, like a real commitment to equity. And we bring dynamic presenters, etc. We have contracted with Yolanda Seeley Yolanda Seeley Reese, and we've been working with her now from the 3 years that I've been here in this district. And the work has been on the archaeology of self and the whole archaeology, the whole perspective, critical love. And critical love is very, very important because if you don't care and love the children you serve, you're not going to have their best interests in heart. You are not going to be as compassionate as you need to be as an educator and connect with student. At that, get curious about culture, get curious about the work. So to me, it's about you, either you live in this world or you don't. Either you commit in this world or you don't. I know that my presence at Ypsilanti has been impactful, or else I wouldn't be there because I don't stay long if I'm not impactful. Every day I has to be about that. I put a lot of hours. I work Saturday, Sunday. I work every single day. And people wonder, why do you do this? Because it matters to the kids who we serve. It matters to the families, and it matters to the teachers that we have a moral responsibility to prepare, support, and the administrators. Okay. So if I can make the world a little bit easier, I'm going to do it. But this EDI shows up every day. And IPSI, for example, it shows up with the opportunities that come up. So we got asked the why to get to the root cause, and we found that, hey, the materials that we had were not culture responsive. So one minute I walk in, the district has surveyed and found out that there was no curriculum for English language art. I invited, developed a process, and invited teachers and invited community, and we went and we looked at 5 or 6 different ELA programs, and we narrowed it down to 2, and one of them, that the one that people favored the most, when we went into the equity and the materials, it was not culture responsive. And I had to bring it to the board and bring it to the team. And we had to go back and look at these. And we went with the second program, which was actually the HMH, because it was very culture responsive compared to any of the others, and from the get-go. And so we had to make a decision of what was in the best interest of the children that were, or do we just follow what everybody else was doing? We were not going to follow what everybody was going to do. So we were able to do that. That it wasn't enough.
Dr. Lopez, let me just interject really quickly, because this is viewed nationally. Just in case some people are unfamiliar with HMH,
Oh,
could you
oh yeah, it's
um,
it's
expound a
yeah,
little bit,
no
please?
problem. HMH we use into English and into literature, and it's a very culture responsive curriculum. Okay, there's no perfect curriculum out there, but what we were able to do by working this last year, because of the pandemic, I was able to work with, we worked with Goldie Mohammed. And Goldie Mohammed is the author of Cultivating Genius. And in that book, she talks about the 5 pursuits, and which is joy, skill, intellect, criticality, and the first one is identity. The last one is joy. And what we did is we worked with her. She worked with our instructional coaches. And then this summer, our instructional coaches worked with our teachers. And then we went through very deep into the culture perspective, and we went through each of those chapters. We narrowed down to 6 per grade level from K to 5. And we actually literally went very deep in them and unwrapped them. And then we embedded the 5 pursuits, and we used a structure that Goldie Mohammed had given us. And now all our curriculum units, we changed some of the essential questions, and then we built in decks of materials that were culture responsive, written by African American for African American, etc. And so we brought materials that were more culture responsive. We purchased those for the teachers. And so in essence, what is taking place is that now we will pilot this, and then we'll come back and we'll continue to tweak it based on our learning and listening to our students and listening to our families and also our staff, and provide that input and continue to do that. In the process, I also work with University of Michigan, and we have a color professor, Elliot Soloway, and Elliot has worked with us and we created a roadmap. And this roadmap we took the HMH, the curriculum, and I broke it all up and turned it into a very culture responsive for grades 3, 5, and 3, 4, 5. and we'll do it for all the elementary, we'll do it in the middle school. And the goal here was to really look at it from a culturally responsive lens. And we took the work that was done by the other group, we embedded into those units, but we made the curriculum very engaging and interactive, where the students can actually take the tools and take notes, highlight, do all this electronic, create video, do whatever content to interact with the teacher. So because our kids are in the alpha, we are dealing with the alpha generation. These are kids who are drawn to technology. That's how they think, how they see, whatever. They cannot be in the classroom just sitting there listening to a teacher talk. That's not going to do it. Kids need to be engaged, minds on. And so we created a curriculum through a platform. He's an engineer, and we were able to work with his team. And it's just, our teacher love it. They're going to be rolling it out this week. Sean, as you noticed that during the teacher rollout, you noticed that we didn't roll out any curriculum, anything, because what I expect is teachers working and developing relationship with students. How are you going to teach kids if you don't know their name? How are you going to teach kids if you don't even know what they know? So we have teachers the first 3 to 4 weeks get to know students. That doesn't mean that they're not doing activities, but you got to build relationship. You got to use restorative practices, circles, to create community. If you can do that, then you can actually teach. The other thing is, then kids know, yeah, you earn their respect, so they can allow you to teach. The other thing is, kids allow you to teach. People may not, they don't necessarily, they could act up in your class, but if they're not acting up, it's they're allowing you to lead them. Okay. And I'm telling you, they're human beings. Okay.
And you know, Dr. Lopez, along those lines, and that's great. As I'm listening to you, you're giving great advice. And I kind of want to guide you to the next question that kind of goes right into that area. So you are by far a leader of leaders. So what's your biggest advice to education leaders who are trying to get started with DEI initiatives? So they have nothing there, and they're looking at their curriculum, they're looking at even maybe their culture and climate. What's your greatest advice about starting this type of work?
Step into it. Just do it. Nike with the just do it. You got to jump it. If you're going to sit by them and be a bystander on the side in any kind of leadership role, then you shouldn't be in leadership. I have no disrespect. Step out. Let somebody else come in. Because the reality is this is not that hard. It's hard work, but it's not that hard. You got to start. Even Minor speaks about you start, but you got to keep going. You got to move. You just can't stay stagnant and not move on anything. Think about your own career. Think about the plans. And, so meet with your team, assess, figure out what's going on, and then try to tackle this from multiple perspectives. I am very different and very non-traditional. I've been in a lot of districts, and I could tell you systems that they weren't built. They're very biased. Okay. White supremacists exist in the institution because the institutions were built from the get-go, and it's very hard to unwrap and break down systems that have been built that way, and they were built that way. So now what we need to do is to unbuild these things. We got to create those structures where we could have honest conversation, where we could coach people. And I'm going to be honest with you, what I love with David Rock, because in here he shows an iceberg, right? And at the top is behavior. Then you got underneath in the surface, you got the surface, right? Which is actually, I got it. I'm sorry. At the very top is results, what we see, and then the behavior. That's on the surface of the water. So that's what, when we're impacting changing people's mindset and their leadership and teachers' observation, we're looking at that, what we see. We're not looking at the emotion, and we're not looking at the thinking of why they're doing what they're doing. If we're going to impact people's life, then we can't be focusing on just what you see in the surface. And we can't be caught in all that emotional stuff, because you got people, I'm anti-abortion and I'm abortion. And then they're caught in all that mess, and they just don't know how to move beyond that path. We got to go a little bit deeper, and deeper is the thinking. So for us, if we want to shift people, is shift their thinking. Invite them in a space where you could really, and then that's how you could influence the decisions they'll make in the future. So that's why when you see me bringing top-notch leaders like Yolanda City Reese, etc., Carlos couldn't shift that thinking, but that author talking to them in the way that she did. Do you understand? So when I saw some of my team members, they were so scared. I'm talking about my Caucasian staff members who are leading schools, working with the principals and leading these schools, and they were uncomfortable with equity. And I'm an equity leader. I have a moral responsibility to get them there. So I brought the very best to get them to that space. And so now to see them leading the equity work in curriculum is deep, and to watch them, and I'm sitting there listening to them with their white counterparts, them talking about why you have to and how important this is, and this is an opportunity. You could do that this way. And that it was so impressive to watch. So yeah, I think it's you.
Oh, we seem to have lost Dr. Lopez. Uh,
I lost you.
he'll rejoin. He'll rejoin us. There he is.
I'm sorry, Sean. I don't know what happened.
Nope, not a problem at all. But that's perfect. I actually want to tie into this. So I'm looking at we kind of ranked our survey questions, and one of the big questions which ties into what you were going into is, does your district have, so it's a twofold question. So just kind of keep this in mind. I can bring you back if you need me to. Does your district have a diversity task force? And also within that question, what's the most difficult part of getting leadership that's resistant on board with DEI initiatives?
Okay. So, Sean, with that one, I'll say the following. I've been in districts, and one particular I can think about now, they had an equity plan. It was approved by the board. They've had it for 11 years and have no impact whatsoever. And what you have is a group of wonderful people who for years have come together to continue to tweak it, to move it, but it's also used by the district strategically to park people. That way, it's a safe space for those people to have a forum. But really, this does not go into the district. You understand? Then they got gatekeepers. I was in a district, and I've been in many, and I don't know, for some reason, other people always lead me to the equity work, right? And in this district, I was leading that work, and I had these two individuals from schools who actually literally would say, I don't want you talking to our staff. You tell us what you need, and we will tell it to them. We will do the equity work in our schools. These people were not comfortable with equity, would not even race into the issue. How would that work move forward? I discovered very easily that you could become equity director, have no impact, because there's gatekeepers who will keep you from that work. Those are the bigotry, and those are the things that I'm saying that happens in entities. And you could have a beautiful plan that you show the world. Look, we got the best one. It's board approved, but but no one lived to that core. So I take great pride within the last 3 years. And last year, during the pandemic, we conducted the Cognia, which is the accreditation. And I came in and we have to do the accreditation to have independent people come into your district and provide you feedback. And I was very mesmerized because this is what I'm focused about. I'm all about system. Everybody knows Carlos is all about system. I'm all about whole child, and I'm all about equity. And guess where the 3 areas that were highlighted that children spoke, parents spoke. They were just shocked in the middle of a pandemic, and we had a loss of a student in the middle of all this that we were dealing with. And I was very stressed because I knew the young man, and it was just very difficult to be in these sessions and whatever when you lose a student in your district during I always have a hard time because children, we're supposed to die before our kids and stuff like that. So it's just very difficult for me. But overall, the cognitive review came back and it was really solid. And the strength was our equity and etc. Sean, I'll tell you very honest because I know you're new. But one of the things when I first got in there, Walked around, okay, oh my goodness, this place needs a lot of work and equity. The way people were talking to kids, etc. We dive deeply. We did a lot of work on archaeology job, but we become great in onboarding new teachers. And you know what it shows me? Because our surrounding districts, including Plymouth Canton, including Way Westland, they target IPSI teachers because they know they're going to have a culture responsive teacher, a teacher who knows how to manage classroom in the relationship of having communication relational with our students. Those show me that, and they're willing to pay them 20, $30,000 more than we can, which is fine because people should move if they need that right, if that's what they need at this point in life. But the perspective is we become a district that's actually, we know how to prepare teachers, especially new teachers on board, and that is an asset that we have because we talk about equity and race every day, and our principals do. And you notice that when you come to our meetings with Alina, it's constantly at the table. And you probably, and it's about coaching adults and it's about coaching, you know, Alina, yesterday we got in a big dialogue about the power of walkthroughs. Really, walkthroughs can be very ineffective. Across the country, people do walkthroughs all the way, and that doesn't prepare a teacher. The reality, what really prepares the teacher, Alina hit it on the nail, is the conversation, rich reflection conversation we had with that teacher about their practice, the thinking that they went when they were developing that lesson. What were they thinking when before they prepared their lesson, and what did they think about how the lesson went, and how can they modify? That is how you move practice, not me walking 3 minutes watching you in your class walk, oh, you're wonderful. So in equity, it's the same thing. We hold conversation, and when a staff member does not live to our core, we got to have those conversations, those courageous conversations. Now, as you notice, I don't know, Sean, if you watched in any of our buildings, walk into our buildings and see what you see. They're from India because Priya brought them for us. But we have elephants. Sue's office, there's an elephant, and it's facing north. In my office, there's an elephant. Alina has an elephant. Almost everybody who's in that before you got here. Okay, the elephant. Why do you think the elephant? Because the elephant is we put it at the table so that people visually can see that we're going to have a conversation. And the perspective is the organization set to have those kind of conversation? We do. It's interesting because when Yolanda Seeley Reese presents, the last hour is all open mic so that people could talk about any issues they're having. And you notice that race equity issues happen during the thing, and they bring it up, and they may not be satisfied sometimes with us. It's okay. We're a learning organization. That's how we learn, we gauge, we talk. I reach out to those people as well, and then we move forward the conversation, because the thing is, are we holding focus group? Are we with children, with students, with families, etc., with staff, with leaders, so that we could better understand how we're doing and where we're headed? But I think it's the equity is either you live it or you don't. And for new principals or leaders who need to do this work, get started, get in there. I would start with archaeology of self, because culture proficiency is a journey. We never quite get there. It's always evolving. Everyone is racist. And racist to broccoli or whatever the hell it is, but everybody is. So, but it's how do we capture ourselves and do one of the things that there's a book, Ask, um, rethink your questions and it'll change your life. I think is what I had. My mind is basic, but there's a roadmap. The biggest piece of that book is either you have a learner mindset or a judger mindset. When we go into space with judger mindset, we're not assuming positive intent. So in essence, we think less of people. And so in essence, it gets us eventually to judge your pit. And you don't give opportunity for people to be themselves and for people to, and I see that in our district with certain situations and certain people. I always have conversation with those individuals in relationship of learning mindset. Learning mindset requires you to get curious, not furious. And when things are not going the way you want it, then it's warranted a conversation so that the person could understand, hey, we're stuck here or whatever. But if that doesn't take place, then you're doing a disservice. because you're jumping into conclusion because you're not understanding the thinking that the person is doing. Because I'll be honest with you, Sean, I've yet to see the teacher who wants to mess up kids. I've not met that yet. And I think people are trying their very best. Sometimes the very best is not the best. Yeah. And so how do we coach them through their thinking so that they could alter those and move forward? I think this work is hard work, but it's work that is important. And I don't know about you, but throughout the United States, what's the largest population that's in public education?
White
That's your
females.
answer. That's your answer. Our
Right
children
there.
of color. And so if we see that our children of color, if I mean EL and all this stuff is special needs and all those things, I would say to you, boy, you have no chance. You got to dive in there. You better start reading and learning. I read every day. I last night, Tell the Win, and then this is the one I'm reading today, The Leader's Guide to Storytelling, right? While I'm reading that, I lost my marketing person, right? Sean. And so in essence, now I got to get myself psychologically prepared of who's going to take that marketing piece because I need someone who can tell stories about our district, about our equity work. And so the next person coming in has to be a good storyteller. Because that's what we need. Yeah. So based on your impact of equity, where are you and what's the next step? And you could,
And
I'm sorry, go
that
ahead.
is actually, you know what, that's perfect because that's where I wanted to go. Is I'm looking at our some of our audience's questions. So you covered the what, like what to do to start. But one of the things that they want to know is how do you measure success? You know, how do you know this is working? How do you make your adjustments? You know, where do you make your shifts at? Where's the data come from?
Okay.
And I'm
So,
going to just for time's sake, Dr. Lopez, I'm going to push you just a little bit because you have a lot of knowledge, and I want to make sure I get most of it out to the people. So I'm going to push you just a little bit because I want to honor you. I know this is a Saturday, and I promised you that I will only keep it at 90 minutes. So I'm going to push you just a little bit.
cool.
Yep. How do
So
you measure success
okay,
of a
so
DEI program?
so here's how you measure, and then the whole perspective is about. So I go through my district, and I'm not trying to put people up front, but I notice observations that I'm making. We have a large open LGBT community in our staff where they have the flags at the doors and whatever, but a lot of people who are LGBT, open, comfortable. When you are attracting that volume of LGBT, is because they feel that they got voice, choice, they feel safe. So that's evident to me that this equity work is happening because we are attracting more LGBT, and not to say that it's all the staff members, but a large percentage of that. We're also noticing that we are attracting. When I first got there, there were African American, etc., Latino, but now we're having more the pool of teachers who are Latin or other languages, because it's not only Spanish in our district. Arabic has increased significantly to the point where next year we would then become the first district now currently in the state of Michigan that will require two languages to graduate from that school, that you'll be able to graduate bilingual. Okay, because that's what I would like to see happen in the district. The other thing is the large number of African Americans in the district. So as a district administrator leads, we've been able to secure, and we interview people, candidate, but you got to be intentional with equity. Okay. And the reality is, if a large percentage of your students are particular, I'm not trying to be racist in any way, right? But I'll be very candid with you. If a large number of students are a particular color and everybody else is not, you need leader representation there that resembles the children. Okay. Children should need to be able to see people who look like them as well in the schools. Okay. And so as we move forward, we have been very, very good. And this is how you know you change the dynamic when we have more teachers of color or leaders of color applying to our district. That wasn't happening before. You couldn't even find any. And now the word gets out. And so what's happening is we've created a safe haven for adults where they feel comfortable, they feel supported, they feel heard. So the issue here is you could have that plan, or do you have the systems where voice is open, where they could come in? Our doors are open. We learn. We have committees and constant, and we set those. So during our district network, our building network, district leadership, performance management, we look at data very deeply. It's about impact, right? Um, we have gone through a pandemic. We've been able to sustain scores, not the best scores in the world, neither looking naturally, right? But the reality is, I'm going to go back. What are you tracking? If we're only tracking academic achievement and we're not tracking all the other learnings that take place, like, for example, nobody gauged all the learning the kids did overnight to become, I have kindergartens who have become masters in Google Classroom, Zoom, that chat book. I mean, it's if you see all the skills the kids, but we don't value that. We have children who run circles, but we don't value that. What we value is a standardized assessment that's done once a year, and how did that gauge, even if I felt good or not. And I'm not justifying. I, I'm an education. There's value in assessment, but a more value informative assessments where we're looking and checking where kids are every single day so that we know how we move them forward, and creating opportunity where we have citizens that are humane. Yeah, because you have people right now who are very educated and are very racist, and you have people who hurt other people, and they're the most educated people, ladies and gentlemen. So I want to make sure that we're creating a nation of children who are humane. So how do we develop those systems? We look at our assessment, but we look multiple levels of assessment. We just don't look at one. We look at those. We survey. We look at longitudinal. We look at all performance, academic, and then you look at all the data to see for patterns, etc. We bring people to the table. We don't do two, four, now we do with people. So we bring people to the table. We do and both and instead of but and. We can't do that. We don't think that way. We are constantly, okay, let's sit and figure out how we can make this happen. And being open and being an out of the box thinker, this is what's required today. We can't go back, and nor do we want to go back to what it used to be before the pandemic. Because, ladies and gentlemen, before the pandemic, it was not that great for children of color, okay, and children of English language learners. So, and students with special need, and so the reality is we're not going backwards. We're going forward, and going forward means more inclusivity, more looking at non-traditionally, exposing children to great literature that's diverse, exposing children to making good decisions, and that kind of thing. I'm exploring a new program that on Monday I'll take to the board. I brought leaders to the table, so we're bringing in Black History 365. I researched it, went back and forth. It's a new program. DPS is doing it, a couple of other districts throughout the state of Michigan, and I jumped in, got a team together, went through it, and we're excited to bring that into the district. You got to be innovative. You got to try innovations, but we also like to be looking at that data and the impact on achievement to students. And then the other aspect are the children in the decision making. Is their voice at that table? Because student voice, agency, and choice needs to be at that table. That's why we're doing these platforms such as Roadmap and all this other stuff. Kids' voice matter. Kids need to be doing more talking, more thinking than the teacher needs to be talking. That's
No, that is phenomenal. Thank you for highlighting some of the best ways to measure success of DEI initiatives. I want to kind of take you back to something you said prior that was, I think, is very relevant. You spoke to how sometimes you have these equity directors or these equity committees, but they're, you know, exper- ex- excuse my loose interpretation, but a lot of times they're for show. They're boxed in by gatekeepers, so they're on arrival, they're non-effective. So along those lines, I'm just looking at my questions, making sure that I'm getting it verbatim. Along those lines, a lot of our listeners that were surveyed wanted to know, how do you give voice to non-majority staff members? because very often they're marginalized. We know that. I just looked at a stat recently. 82% of public school educators are white and female, but the majority of the students that they're teaching are not by far. So how do we give voice to our non? Sorry, I think I said non-minority. Sorry. How do we give voice to our non-majority staff in this work?
Yep. So number one, you have to, if you believe in this equity work, you got to lead from that space. Are you creating a psychologically safe space where the voices of your I know you used the word, what was the word? Non-majority. Um, I I have issue with word subgroups and stuff like that because it makes it seem that any other group that the white is superior to that, and they're the target, and everything else is no. We're not subgroups. We're groups, no different than they are. You understand? And so we need to have those conversations and even change the wording because words matter. Words set those biases, and is white supremacist ideology of how they control the narrative. And so what I would say to you is creating the spaces. And I would say to you, you do need, Sean, and I think you mentioned that, but in other districts, for example, in a particular district, I'm thinking about what the African American people of color did is they developed groups themselves, you understand, and they mapped and they did literacy, like the historic literacy circles, like they had read The Hate You Give, and and it was like a large group at home and whatever, and discussing. And this is how the staff in that school was able to voice their concerns and air. Your staff needs an opportunity to air because, like you said, it's 85%. There's a lot of racist comments, the all those microaggressions that get communicated in the teacher's lounge. Sometimes I'm going to be candid with you. It starts wearing you out after a while. And so a district that's trying to attract people of color got to prepare themselves. So they got to be doing some archaeology of self and race with their staff, the white staff. That's why equity work is so important. Even if you didn't even have a black person or a person of color or whatever, it is work that will impact the lives of everyone. Okay. And a person who's non-person of color need this work more than even the person of color. So it's important. But I would say to you, it's creating that space where they know that you have an open door policy as a leader and develop a platform. I don't like co-creating stuff for people. I bring people to the table and let them, we do a session where I plot out what are ways that we could support you and let them come out, because different community is different how they would like to be serviced. And so let them be part. People support. Galileo always says, and Alina always says that in our district, our superintendent, she says, people support what they help create. That's, why I don't have a pushback on curriculum, because I get the teachers developing that curriculum with us. So in essence, there's no pushback because they developed it, but they're working on what we need to work on the standards and culture responsive practices. And so in essence, there's no fight there. They're presenting it, and so people buy it. And then I don't have to force anybody. They own it, right? So if people co-create this work, and when you're co-creating, you're learning. And so it's how do you engage them? But I think bring people to the table, and you're going to find that they'll come out with innovative ways to create that space. I find that is interesting because with the with Yolanda Silly Reese, after we have like 3.5 hours with her, after everybody always leaves, if you stay behind, Sean, do that one of these days. Watch who stays behind. Majority are African American, which want to have then a conversation and dialogue with Jolanda. You understand? And it's kind of interesting to watch that. Your staff need those opportunities. So if you could co-create that space, and I always welcome, because we are in Washington County, so we have a lot working with Jennifer Bank is, I would say to you, stellar when it comes to very unapologetic. It's all about action. If you're not met this human being, she is the director for all academics up at the Washington ISD, and just an amazing person to get to know. Reach out to her if you need to. Just a very great thought partner for me. But she's all about the biggest piece about action. You find me? You could do, she tells you very clearly, you could read all you want and da da da, but if you don't do anything with it, what is it? You follow me? It's just an idea. We got to put things into action. And so I would say to you, my lives have been shifted. And during the pandemic, Sean, I became, I serve as first learner. I shut the heck up. You know, I talk a lot. As you could tell people, I talk a lot. But when it comes to that equity work, I was so engaged. I dived myself into deep equity work through that the last 2 years, and participated with, Gloria Billings. I mean, you name it, Fatima Love, Goldie Muhammad, Yolanda, and many, many more from the different universities and whatever. And I could just tell you, either you live this work and you breathe it, because this has to be the air. Kids are not black just today or during February. They're black every day. And we got to be aware. And as by talking with staff, you realize those people, there's this, I don't see color and stuff like that, right? That is like a red signal. I mean, if you don't see color, then you can't be here. I'm scared. Do you understand? Because what are you going to do to our kids? You're saying to half of the kids, you don't see them. So it's important that we pick up on these things and then have good conversation. So we hire bilingual teachers and from abroad, because you can't find them now. So you got to bring them from abroad, pay for their training, do all this other stuff. Anyways, but some of them come in, and one of them raised that whole issue. And so we had some conversation. You understand? Because you, and here you're going to see color. And we're going to talk about this because it's important. How do you shift mindset? Because if not, they can't continue with us. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but we need the very best in front of our kids, and we need teachers. And I would say to you, you're out there and you and not considering you really want to go into education as the best field in the world. If I had an opportunity, I'm 62 now. If I've had to go back right now and do a career, I would do my career again and again and again. Being a classroom teacher was the most amazing experience, and how I would probably finish my career. I've done all the roles all the way to superintendent. All I could say to you is an amazing career. It's a career that impacts the lives. Every career has been impacted by a teacher. So it is a very, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's just people forget that.
Now, as we're drawing to a close, I'm excited to ask these last two questions. So one, I'm going to ask you to just kind of look into the future and do your visioning, put on your visioning hat. What does it look like when we get like you were in a district and they got everything right with DEI? What does it look like?
Or what it looks like is the following. I see you, I hear you, I get you, I value you, I respect you, and I love you and care about you. That is an environment where everybody feels that way. People's choice, voice, agency, let it be kid, adult, whatever, is there. So if you're LGBT, black, white, whatever, everybody is valued for, like Martin Luther King said, that character, right? And Sean, have you ever walked in my office? You see that there's a picture of Martin Luther King. And if you come to my house, you see, when I was in 4th grade, Miss Nowak had me, I didn't know back then because I hardly spoke English, but she had me stand on a milk crate. And I was supposed to say, I have a dream. I was supposed to be, we were role playing. I was supposed to be Martin Luther King. I don't know. All I know is that I knew that this person that I was communicating these words with my broken English was somebody very important. Through my life, the more I read, the more exposed. I think in America history, there's no other history more powerful than the civil rights movement. There isn't. if you look at it and people are looking for an open heart, you see that it was the most powerful and most movement, humane, the whole perspective of, you saw the inhumanity, everything else, but you saw the greatness that came out of that. Martin Luther King, when I look at Martin Luther King, why he's my hero as a leader, because he says one thing, and every time I see his pictures, it stares in my face. And what I see when I look at that picture every day that I get in my office, it could be, I ask this question in front of my face: what am I willing to die for? As a leader, every leader should be asking themselves, what are you willing to die for? This equity work is about that. As a superintendent in this country or leaders in this country, you have to see it from that perspective. And I'm not saying you dying, but yeah, what are you fighting for? And if you're not looking at equity for all the children, because the law in Michigan and the law throughout the entire nation is about how do we create spaces for learning for children? Because right now, the chaos right now from the left and the right, all that stuff needs to be away from our classrooms, because we're teaching children. And we got to empower their future, because we do not know what the world will be for them. But I also do know that if anybody has the power to shift and change, is in that classroom, these young people, because they are the ones who are going to be the future leaders. And I want to make sure that when they get out and they're in that world, they're making great decisions on behalf of others. Okay. And so from our end, we got to get our stuff together, and we got to make sure that when we're in these seats of power, that we're doing everything we can to be inclusive, to create those conditions and continue to champion this very unapologetic, like our board president, Dr. Hawkins says, we got to be unapologetic about this work and have that courage that comes from within, because it's greater than you. You are advocating for children and their future, and making sure that every decision we're making is in their best interest, even though we do not know what the future is going to be for them. But we're going to prepare them with that education. You follow me? To think out of the box, to innovate, to be, and so exposing them to all of this non-traditional education as possible. Yeah, then where kids can actually. But one of the biggest pieces is the humanity. I think I, Sean, as you get to know me better, is I don't talk ill about people, because I always presume positive intent about people. I always work very hard on that. The reality is people think, oh, Carlos, you forget people even when they mess you up. I think part of life God has taught me is forgiveness, because it's something that person is working through. If they didn't get it right, they're working through. It has nothing to do with you. But that's not going to shift me and change who I am as a person. I think that's good in the world. I don't care. People who are in prison because they've done something, they're still good in people. And if we believe that, we could change and alter people in ways to do common good. And that's why I always say God will always look over our children, and he eventually overrule. And you'll see that it shifts. Those people who don't need to be there are gone eventually. You understand? Just me. I'm sorry. I know.
No. Thank you. So we're at our last question, and I'm so very excited to ask this question on behalf of my friends, because you have specific agency in this area. So I think you're uniquely positioned to answer this question. So for my colleagues and our listeners and watchers who are part of the Latinx community, what advice do you give them if they're pursuing a career in central office?
Well, I think that the biggest piece is just do it. I would say to you is jump in it, follow, get into any training programs you can, and know that you will be very impactful. It's whatever you put in there and you're going to do. If it's already happening, it happens first in your head. If you see yourself there, you're already there. So just apply. What are you going to get? A no? You go to, my mom used to say, knock the door, kick it over, go out the window, go to the other side. But get to the other side. Don't just take a no for an answer. Continue to do it and go do it. I think you're going to be impactful with whatever you do and follow your dream, what you love, because that's what will give you. If you follow money, money comes from when you follow what you dream and you love, and that's.
Hmm. Okay, we've lost Dr. Lopez again. I'm sure that he'll sign back in briefly. We may have some technical difficulties going on here. But just in case you're joining us again, or you're joining us late, this is the Fisher Educational Consulting Group television channel, and we are hosting guest speaker Dr. Carlos Lopez, who is assistant superintendent with Ypsilanti Community Schools, and he is currently giving us advice and sharing his wisdom on diversity, equity, and inclusion from the lens of curriculum assessment and instruction, but also from the lens of just daily school operations. And he's joined us back. So go ahead. He was in the midst of giving us advice. Quite a few of our viewers belong to the Latinx community, and they wanted to know, as they're progressing through their careers, they wanted to, one, know how to navigate specific barriers that they may experience as members of the Latinx community, but also what other steps should they take to achieve their goals of being a central office administrator.
I think the biggest piece for me is ask people if they could be mentors to you. And sometimes I used to be shy and say, well, that person is so high up there, they would never. I started asking, and I was just shocked how many people say yes, they would mentor me. I had once the assistant that was a superintendent of Dearborn School. It's a Caucasian gentleman. I was so impressed by him, and I asked him, guess what? He funded for me to go to my first superintendent. Out of his pocket, he funded me to go to Ohio to get certified for superintendent. I'll never forget that. And from there, I decided, well, I'm going to ask different people. So I have, people who help me coach me for technology. My youngest coach is like 16 years old because that's their world. But I have anywhere to another technology person who's almost in their 80s, and she is in the district, and she just helps me with stuff like you can't imagine because that's not my world. But all I can say to you, just get mentors and continue learning, join organizations, and then the other aspect is apply. You be shocked. Somebody will say no, but somebody's going to say yes. And then once you get there, let me tell you something, there's no romance. You learn by it. So go there and trust yourself and just start it. And guess what? The speed of the organization be your speed. It's the speed of the leader. So the way you lead it is how it's going to be led. And I would say to you, and know your strength and know the areas that you're not, and surround yourself, hire people who have that background. I'm a curriculum person. So I hire people who are very technological, people who are very data, and those are my team. You understand? And so I hire and always hire smarter people than you. Don't be scared about hiring smarter people. They will help you thrive. And I would say to you, that's the law of the lead, where people tend to hire lower people because they're afraid that they would know and get them out the job. Don't do that. Hire more smarter people. They will support you. Keep a network. Like, for example, I'm very close to, and then if you tie ally, like, for example, let's say I wanted Alina as a superintendent and I tie into assistant superintendent, we could go from district to district. Do you understand? So if you develop those network, you could follow or be in this district, I'll be the superintendent. You follow me? And those kind of network are great ways to get in as well. And always go back. The superintendent at Oak Park became very close to me, and he had been the superintendent for 15 years, older gentleman, right? And he taught college and whatever. One of the days that I became superintendent, I was freaking out because I didn't know what to do. And I called him. He was going for open heart surgery, and he was answering my call. And I said to him, "Oh, thank you, Alex." Da, da, da. And I said, "How are you doing?" He says, "Carlos, I'm gonna have to let you go because they're rolling me into open heart surgery." I was just livid that this man actually took my call, but he was my mentor. This is to what level. And I can say to you from the bottom of my heart, you can't do this work alone. It's big. But what we need more responsibility is we're doing all these greatness because we're letting other people follow. We're the trailblazers at time. And if that's what you're doing, you got to open door. You're opening doors to all these babies that are following you. Who are looking, you look at Serena Williams, right? Look at the young lady at our district. I had a good conversation with an African American young girl who's tennis, and she said, "Well, that's what I'm going to do." And I had a good conversation for around 10 minutes outside there, and I was very impressed of the level of the impression. You understand that this big hero kind of it has done for this young girl, and would she do it? Absolutely, because nothing stops you if you put it in your mind that you want to do it. I really believe that you could. There's nothing you can learn. If Geraldine, who's 70 something, is learning bass guitar with Clark in my office when they go out there after hours, I'm just mesmerized. I'm just like, you can learn anything at any point. That our brains are designed to learn 24/7. The only limit that limits you is you. If you listen to these other people who are naysayer, and you got to get rid of those people. You got to surround yourself by those people who are going to support you. And sometimes family members could be that. You just give them the love and whatever, but you got to the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. The fixed mindset tells you always trying to tell you, hey, you can't do it. You're going to fail. Everything that make failure your friend. And then the growth mindset, get it louder, and that'll tell you, you may not know it yet, but I know you got this skill and that skill, and you'll survive this. And you keep repeating that. You know what? I got this. I got this. And whatever I don't know, I'm gonna go ask. And I'm gonna look at Sean and look at what I'm very impressed, Sean. If you were with Sean on a daily basis and you hear him talking to other people, I'm sitting back and I'm stopping the copy room and I'm listening to talk and I'm like, and I'm not the mind, but it is the knowledge that comes out of his head. It's just like, whoa. Yeah. So I would say to you that to me, that's what this is about, is mentoring each other, working with each other, and don't be shy to ask people. I mentor a lot of people constantly because people have mentored me, people have supported me, and I need I don't care if this position or not. Alina, I sit with my superintendent and have good conversation because she needs a thought partner. And like I say to you, we all do. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you the CEO of the biggest you need some reflect, and think things through, and just know that.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. Our cups are never full, right? And we pour into others because we've been poured into. So I always want to do this before I close out. So I've had quite a few Latinx guests prior, and by no means are all no. So the Latinx community is not a monolithic block. So all Latinx community members are not bilingual, but quite a few are. So in the past, I've always given the opportunity, and some have taken me. Well, I think up until this point now, all have taken me up on this. Would you like to give a message to our Latinx viewers in Spanish before we exit?
Yep, I can. Bueno, no, la oportunidad en nuestra vida es seguir en nuestros sueños y lo que queremos hacer, pero yo pienso que una de las cosas bien importantes para mí es representar nuestra comunidad y probarla. No solo eso, pero cuando vemos los niños, que si estamos representando a los niños y ayudando a los niños para que ellos puedan tener las oportunidades que a lo mejor nosotros no hemos tenido, y el futuro, ellos son el futuro de nosotros, y entonces es bien importante que nosotros hagamos todo lo que podemos hacer. Y por eso es bien importante que ustedes, si tienen la oportunidad de ser maestros, directores, superintendente, que por favor háganlo, ¿ok? Yo sé que las personas latinas y las personas africanas son uno de los mejores superintendentes de los Estados Unidos, así que es bien importante. Sean, I'll leave you with this. If you do a national search, the strongest superintendents in the nation are Black women, and everybody knows it. They're the ones who are more curriculum, they get achievement up. And if you watch them lead, they lead very unapologetic. And if you sit back and you look, is that they have endure all kinds of adversity. And as a result, they cut through all that crap so they can really focus on what the work is. And they're very unapologetic about it. But would the nation want you to know that? No, because when you look at superintendent in this country, it's pretty much run by white males who 99% of the time are not curriculum people, who know more about the nails and whatever went to that construction than they know about student learning. But if you look deeply in this country and you look, women, and since your audience is also women need to, here's what you find. A very mediocre white male will see a job and they say that they're performing at the 60%, they'll apply for that job. When a woman applies for a job, she's at 99% and she's still questioning, should I apply? Would I be the right candidate? That needs to stop. You need to stop that. And as a Latino X, it's the same thing. I don't let anything limit where the hell I'm going to go. I am consistent. That's why I say keep knocking at the door. Like my mom used to say, go underneath, go through the keyhole, kick the door open, go out the window, go on the other side, but get to the other side. Somebody's going to say yes. And somebody's going to give you that opportunity. And then you take it, and it's what you do. And I'll say to you as you leave your job, my mom used to always say this, leave your job better than you found it. Every job that I ever left, I left a 6-month plan and everything was laid out. And actually came back and supported the person who came back at no cost. And all I can say to you, it's important because along with it is your name. It's what, because this was not about you. This is about the community and the kids you serve. So that leads to a whole communication. And the weirdest thing, every job I leave, they always hire 3 to 6 people to replace me. Isn't that not? It's nuts. Because what happens is, as you get older, you get more knowledgeable stuff, and then you're taking on more, kind of thing. And so just know that by design, if you become a learner, you're going to learn a whole lot. Trust it, but also serve to help others to get there. Okay. So if any of you need my advice or whatever, reach out. I have tons of stuff and anything that I could do to help any of you in your journey. I'm here, and I would say to you, don't be shy. If you don't ask, you're not going to get, and then you can have a good conversation. I mean, I'll try to help as best as I can, but I would say to you, trust you. If it's something that you want to do, hell, go do it, because people will be better off by you doing those things and helping them, create great spaces for kids and others.
And to my audience, once this video is posted, it'll also be posted in a blog, but it'll also be posted on YouTube. We'll have a description that we'll have Dr. Lopez contact information in there if you want to follow up and get more guidance, if that's okay with you, Dr. Lopez.
That's fine.
Okay, perfect. So as we close out, Dr. Lopez, one, I wanted to personally thank you for, I know when we talked before and I gave you a list of questions, I did not tell you that I was going to ask you that to deliver a message in Spanish, but it added such cultural uniqueness and value. And I know that my audience, because when our past Spanish speakers have done it, the feedback that we've got, like, it's been really appreciated, because we live in this environment where it's guided by white supremacy. We'll just be honest. So whenever we can claw out these little enclaves where we feel like the norm, is so appreciated. So, I knew I threw that at you. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. So we'll go ahead and close out. Everyone, my name is Sean Fisher, and I'm the proud CEO and owner and producer of this YouTube channel, which is the Fisher Educational Consulting Group television channel, which here we focus on highlighting and bringing forth the voices of women educators and educators of color. Today, we have had our awesome guest, Dr. Carlos Lopez, who is Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Assessment and Instruction for the Ypsilanti Community School System, talk to us about how to integrate and realize the diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies of your district. Again, Dr. Lopez, thank you for being a guest on our show, and we hope to have you back soon.
Okay. Thank you. Be safe. Thank you, Sean.
You are welcome, sir.